Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, part of the National Bleav Network. And back with me to talk about the Rockets at the All-Star break is Cooper Klein, Rockets Chop Shop contributor and co-host of the NBA Draft podcast, Upside Swings. And Cooper, oh my, did the wheels come off the Rockets bus since we last spoke. Do you think an All-Star break with VanVleet and Jabari's return fixes this?
I don't know about fixes, but there are some pretty big structural issues that Jabari and Fred specifically help with. I think moving everybody back into a more natural progression offensively and defensively will do us some favors. I don't know about fixes because this is a lot of the stuff we've been struggling with all year that's just kind of been hidden by the right talent level of this team.
Yeah, I'm going to give 3 reasons for hope after the break, and I'll throw them at you one at a time, Coop. And my number 1 is the Rockets in October and November had 5 back-to-back games, that 5-week stretch. In December and January, they had 2 each, but in February, with just 28 days in it, they have 5. They just played 8 games in 13 days. That's without VanVleet, Jabari, and sometimes Adams and Tari, who have either back-to-back restrictions or minutes restrictions. Now, Cooper, I heard Udoka say after the Warriors lost that every team's going through this. But no, not everybody's had this type of schedule. And let's remember, Golden State was much fresher because Draymond and Butler missed a combined 24 games the last month.
You can already see it kind of with guys like Amen and even Jalen to a lesser extent, but just like guys being tired who play 30 to 40 minutes a night, every single night. For Amen, it's taking on the primary defensive guy role. And he doesn't look like the guy he looked like in October and November. He's able to do it. He's able to get out there and play 40 minutes. And all these guys can do it. They can all go out there, play active, play hard, play tough for that long. But they're not really able to keep up the same level of play that allowed them to beat the Celtics, the Cavs, the other top teams in the West, the Grizzlies, all that kind of thing. You can kind of see that. And you also don't have, your depth pieces who allow you to make sure everybody's at least slightly more fresh. So I do think that at least the small break will help in that regard, playing less back-to-backs. I thought the league was trying to eliminate back-to-backs just in general, and it feels like there have been more than ever this season. So that's been really frustrating from a fan and just like an analyst perspective. Like, these are bad games. They're objectively worse games than if you give them a day off. So how do we fix this issue? But that's a topic for another time.
Yeah, you led me right into my second reason, and you said it. It's Amen Thompson. He's slipped recently and combined this crazy schedule with him playing 38.4 minutes per game in his last 20 games. If he had this average over a season, he'd be leading the NBA in minutes played per game. I mean, Coop, we're talking a second-year player. Like, his usage rate has been up to more than we've ever seen because no VanVleet. I know we just assume he's a cyborg, but the kid's human, and he's barely played over one NBA season. It's just 114 games so far.
Yeah, he is the best athlete in the NBA, but I mean, that's a Herculean task on top of how much he cuts off ball, how much he's moving around on offense. He's setting screens. He's the primary defensive stopper. He's also getting in passing lanes. He's also going to block shots. He's also still trying to rebound at a really high level, even though that's not where his role is at the moment. I mean, he's still playing with that super high motor, but it's just not the same as it was even when he was down at like 30 minutes per game. 38 for the amount of games that we have played since he has like really started getting huge minutes is ridiculous. And you shouldn't expect that of anybody, much less your primary stopper, who's also a key cog in your offense. I mean, he gets downhill and creates an advantage every time he touches the ball, and they actually get him moving downhill. That's like unprecedented, amounts of work for anybody, much less a second-year player who I don't even think he played all 82 last season. And if he did, he only played like 15, 20 minutes a game.
Oh, no. Yeah. That's why I was saying it's only 112 games. He missed so much of last year. So it's really like he's basically played a season and a quarter, not a season and and a little over a half. And don't forget, this kid's so good that he can't even get rest on All-Star weekend. His team loses, and Sunday they're like, no, you're the one guy that we want, that we need the next day. You got to come back and help us out. So that says all you need to know. All right, my third reason for hope is the remaining strength of schedule. It's not just that the Rockets have the 10th easiest in the league. Who are the teams that just ahead of them or around them? The Nuggets, Grizz, Clips, and Lakers are all in the top 6 hardest remaining schedules. They have 2 back-to-backs coming out of the break, the Rockets do, Cooper, but only 2 more after that. The schedule will help.
Yeah, hard not to look at that and feel more excited, especially just because of the guys we get back in Jabari and Fred, who, as much as we want to lament on especially Fred's shot chucking at times, sometimes we just need a guy who can get something in the half court. That has been something that this team has desperately missed. They're awful in the half court. I will tweet out I'll retweet the tweet I saw, but they are having a historically bad half court offensive season to go along with a historically good offensive rebounding season, which is unheard of in the modern NBA. And Jabari's a part of that, especially just because he's able to clear the defensive glass and box out really well on the offensive glass. He's an okay offensive rebounder, if I'm recalling correctly, but just a cog in the machine who allows everybody else to play more to their strengths, and a guy who can knock down open threes, which will desperately help this team in the half court. I do really think getting him back, moving Amen's minutes down, even if you keep his role pretty similar, will do just tons of good for this team. I'm pretty excited for the second half of post All-Star break. I'm not expecting a chip. I'm not expecting a ton, but I'm just excited to watch this team play to its fullest potential again when they've been playing so shorthanded for the last few weeks.
It's also really important to know, because we talk about them being tired. We talk about the injuries. You talk about the offense. This is the issue with the Rockets. Everybody said before the season, or at least the Rockets organization said, we're the deepest team in the NBA. We've got all these guys. Well, you have to be deep if you're playing Udoka-style defense 82 games a year, and you don't have guys that are skilled enough offensively to get that offense that you need, that you were talking about, Cooper, because what the problem becomes is when everybody else focuses in, all these teams are extremely talented, but when everybody else like, hey, we're going to start playing like the playoffs are coming up, we're going to start focusing on, giving that effort consistently, then it's like, hey, we were winning on hustle points. It gets way harder to win on hustle points at that point.
I think that we've missed Jabari more than anything for a multitude of reasons. Part of that is because, obviously his offensive gravity. He's kind of a simple offensive player, but he adds a very sorely needed wrinkle to the offense that we just don't have. We have all these guys who just want to get downhill as fast, as hard as possible. Amen, Sengun, Jalen ideally, Tari, all these guys who just want to put the ball in at the rim just as quickly, as much as possible. And then Jabari, who kind of pulls everybody out, forces the defense to, acknowledge that there are, layers to this offense, even though they're kind of simple. Mainly, I think Jabari coming back defensively is going to be really huge, because without his backline help, his defensive rebounding, this team just, the defense has looked completely different since he's gone down. Part of that is that Amen has started having to play almost fully point of attack, especially with Fred VanVleet gone. But Sengun has almost no help in the hedge. We have nobody who can slide with, smaller guards, can slide with guards on the perimeter and properly execute that scheme if Sengun is outmatched, which happens sometimes, even though he's been really solid defensively. We have nobody who can rotate on the back line. Dylan's just stopped playing low man rotation defense. Jalen's not good at it. Fred's 5'11". There's just so many flaws that this team has, especially with Amen and Tari almost only playing at the point of attack, when, the real strength of the defense at the start of the year was that they were roamers and playing in help and sometimes playing at the point of attack, but mostly shot blocking getting in passing lanes, all that kind of stuff. And Jabari will kind of, I think with him coming back, everything will kind of shift back into a more trap heavy, hey, let's actually hit at the level. Let's stop guys. Let's get in their bodies. Let's make sure that we're actually utilizing everyone in this more switch heavy, rotation heavy scheme that they just haven't really been able to execute, because they are deep in theory, I guess, with like NBA players, but they don't have like a true depth of guys who can. Uncle Jeff can only, like, best case scenario, plays once every 4 games, and he'll play well, I guess, once every 4 games, but he can't play anymore because he's ancient. Aaron Holiday has a good offensive game every other night. I guess he hits an open 3 every other night, but you have almost no consistent depth, which is very different. Like, if your depth is unplayable, it's not depth, no matter how much you want it to be there on paper.
Yeah, some of the depth we talk about it, like Steven Adams and Tari Eason, have the health issues. You mentioned Jeff Green with the age issues. You love all those guys, but it limits what you can do with them and how much they can play and all that sort of stuff. So there's a lot going on that, like, oh, you look like, oh, all these guys can play a little bit, but can they? And that's the thing. And I do want to move from, because we talked about some hope, I want to move to concern a little bit in just a second. But before we roll on, our listeners will have a blast playing Underdog Fantasy, guys. You're going to love it. Underdog has a unique approach to fantasy sports with their simple pick'em style format. You can select players you know will outperform expectations without the traditional daily fantasy drawbacks. If you're a fan of drafting your own guys, which many fantasy owners feel is the best part, Underdog has simple drafts where you can select a team and compete for serious cash. You'll find all the major leagues and college sports on Underdog, plus it's user-friendly, making it easy and fun to play. Why not start right now by clicking the link you see in our episode description and using the promo code HOU? All of that helps us as well, supports us when you do that. And if you do come aboard, you get a free pick and up to $1,000 in cash. Bonus cash, by the way. Not a bad deal. So go check out Underdog and download their app to your favorite mobile device. All right, Cooper, in honor of the SNL 50th last night, feel free to give me the Debbie Downer face as I rattle my first concern off. Are you ready for Debbie Downer face for me?
Hey, I'm always down to be a little bit of a downer sometimes. It's the inner draft guy in me. You got to be a hater sometimes.
And sorry to be this way about Sengun coming off his first All-Star appearance this weekend. But, and it was a fun weekend for him, I'm sure. But I truly thought his shooting would come around at some point this year. It's kind of shocking to look at the drop-off from the last 2 years to this year. His true shooting, it's the lowest of his career. It's worse than his rookie season. He's gone from 59.9 and 58.5 true shooting the previous 2 years to 54% this year. He's missing the bunnies. Since last year, it's dropped 6% from 5 feet in, 6%, which feels like a big drop. And you could see it in his points per game. I'm also troubled by his consistent bad starts to games. You can see it in his shooting coop where he goes 50% true shooting in the first half, and it jumps to 57% in the second half. Although, you want to see him better at the end of games. So that part is good.
The efficiency dropping for Sengun has been worrying. I do think he's been a better player this season than the last few seasons just because the defensive jump has been so good. So I don't want this to come off as I'm hating on Sengun at all because he's incredible. He just made the All-Star team. But, I mean, he's also taking a lot harder of shots, it feels like, than he took in the past because he's not working as hard because he's overtasked defensively. So he's not able to get right to the rim every single time. He's settling more for those little push shots, for the hooks from further out, just tougher and tougher shots where he doesn't have to exert himself as much. And that's understandable. That's just a conditioning issue. And that'll come with time. And, he's working his butt off every single game. So I expect it to come around in the next few years, but I would prefer for him to just make his layups, right? It's not just the shot selection. It's you're missing bunnies. You're missing, his free throw shooting hasn't improved significantly to the point where in the clutch, he's been good, with his free throws. I'm happy that he's at least doing that. But I mean, we've lost games because of this team's inability to shoot free throws. And some of that does come from Sengun.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the free throws that the Rockets take, there are three guys that shoot the most free throws on the team. It's Amen, Jalen, and Sengun. And two of those guys are two of their worst free throw shooters, Amen and Sengun. And that's the problem. It's like there's so many guys that are shooting 80% or a little above 80%, or at least, pretty good free throw shooters. Those guys are the issue. And also, one of the other things about Sengun, and I don't know if you've seen this, but this is also what concerns me a little bit. I see him more this year than I've seen him in the past. He gets caught up on double teams with nowhere to go. Like he dribbles into it and then he doesn't know what to do with it or how to get out of it or how to throw it out. I think the thing with Rockets fans sometimes is they blame everybody else. They're not where they're supposed to be. But he wasn't doing this type of stuff previously. This is more of a this year type thing. That means probably that other teams have increased their intensity on like, we've got to stop him and close off angles when he does dribble into that double team. And they understand that. And so like, I think that's a big part of the issue too, Cooper.
It definitely is. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think that he's seeing more double teams than he's ever seen, and more random, like sporadic double teams that are really thought out, because he is the main focus of the defense's scouting report. And this all kind of comes back to what's been my biggest issue with him offensively since joining the Rockets. He predetermines a lot of what he's going to do. He's not the best at continually reading the floor and like Jokic does, where he sees where guys are going to go before they even know, or he knows exactly where every single player is on the floor at every single second. He's just really good at getting a guy in single coverage, sometimes even double coverage, and just like destroying them and pounding them on the glass. He is like not a great passer. He can make reads, he can make kickouts, he can really make interior passes, but he's really limited with the lack of spacing that we have, because the passes he's able to most consistently make are those inside passes. And those are usually 3 or 4 guys just collapsing into the paint the second he gets the ball, because we have no shooting. So there's not as many opportunities for, Amen to cut and get an easy layup, or for Tari to grab the offensive board and get an easy putback.
But I will say this though about what one issue is, I think, and it doesn't help them out. The Rockets, not only are they not good at shooting, but outside of Amen and Tari, they have got a lot of guys that he plays with a lot that aren't good at cutting at all. So it's like, if you can't shoot, at least cut. Dylan Brooks is not necessarily Mr. Cut guy. Either is VanVleet. Jabari, not really. I mean, maybe he's gotten a little bit better over the years, but he's still not where, you see it with Amen and Tari, and what a difference those guys make when they start cutting, because he can hit those guys and he can make those plays.
Yeah, those are the best plays that he makes, honestly. Like, that's what gives him the reputation as baby Jokic. As stupid and as simple as it is, like a comparison, those are the plays that give him this rep. And Jalen's not a great cutter. He's fine like in scheme plays when he's in just a 2-man game, but he's not like a spontaneous cutter like he could be. He spends far too much time just standing in the same spot. Jabari's gotten a lot better, but he's still not at Tari or Amen's level. You can tell that a lot of it has been drilled into him, and it's like him and Sengun kind of sorting things out, but he's not like Tari or Amen. And when Tari and Amen are both in the starting lineup, especially without Jabari, there's not nearly enough spacing for them to be consistently cutting, getting into the paint, getting easy layups. And that makes Sengun's life so much harder. It is a him issue, because he's a great passing big. I wouldn't say that he's like a great playmaker. He's a really good passer and good playmaker, but he's not great. And the team around him does nothing to help with his shortcomings. You can't expect him to be incredible at everything. And hopefully he'll grow and the rest of the team will grow, and this won't be an issue in the next few years. But yeah, it is a frustrating thing to deal with right now.
Is part of it, do you think, with his playmaking? Because we saw him the first couple of years and he was making these like ridiculous passes. But when you make the ridiculous passes and the crazy stuff, you can also make the turnovers. And when Udoka comes in, He goes, no, we can't have the turnovers anymore as a team. We cut out the turnovers. We cut out of a lot of our issues and stuff like that. So is it partly Sengun needs to adapt a little bit to begin with, and maybe by next year or the year after, he gets more freedom and they say, okay, now we want to see you open up a little bit. We can maybe afford a turnover so you can get us some more easy shots.
That's definitely part of it. I mean, Ime's basically come out and said it at this point. I'm pretty sure Sengun has as well. Partially is that a lot of his flashy passing, especially as a rookie, wasn't like actually making that big of an advantage compared to just a normal pass. Some of it was, and some of it was really impressive, but I don't think that the great play to turnover ratio was really where you wanted it to be. It was fun, don't get me wrong, but I do think as he continues to grow, continues to become a better processor and feeler of the game, hopefully that stuff will come back and we'll lean more into this kind of hub Sengun offense that people have been clamoring for. It's not my favorite idea at the moment just because of his specific weaknesses, but if he continues to grow, I'd love to see it over the next few years.
Yeah, and this leads me to the next thing with the Rockets is, we talk about the half-court offense being the problem. It's about their offensive engines. That's the concern with this team overall. Sengun, and that gets me to Jalen. The Jalen lovers hate me because I've been a cynic, tried to give him love last March, tried to do it again in mid-January after that great stretch, but honestly, nothing's changed offensively from last year, or frankly, from his entire career outside of free throw percentage this year. His field goal percentage up 0.2% from last year. So basically no change, which is still a poor 42.5%. His three-point percentage, 1.8% up from last year, but still below league average. He's averaging almost one less rebound, 0.5 less assists, the same amount of steals, and 0.2 more turnovers. To top it off, Coop, he turns it over late in games, and his decision-making still stinks. So he's a guy that still sort of, to me, this is a six man. This is what he profiles as a guy that doesn't help you much else besides scoring. And he's super inconsistent. So bring him in off the bench as a six man. That's what he is.
Yeah, I've been beating this drum for a little while. I wanted to get excited in January because it seemed like his process was slightly better. And, I want to appreciate guys' growth in any area, especially if they're on my team and they're like our primary perimeter engine. But man, Jalen's inability to dribble still, makes sense. He's got small hands. His core strength is like still not where you want it to be. And that's why he doesn't draw fouls, because his core he's not able to stay in the air and draw fouls consistently like a guy like SGA, who's still wiry, but is incredibly strong, incredibly poised. And Jalen just isn't there as a driver. He's still out of control all the time because of the lack of handle. He still can't pass like at all. He's added a few skips here and there that are incredibly telegraphed. But man, it's really hard because if he's on, he can win you games just with his streakiness and his hot shooting. But that is not a consistent value add to any team. And that, reflects in the obviously small sample size, blah, blah, blah. But it's really hard to have this conversation and not look at the plus minus with him on and off, like the on-off splits with him on and off the floor. Like this season, the Rockets without Jalen have the third best net rating of all time without Jalen on the floor. And obviously, every single team has lineups that are incredible, lineups that are awful, and it's just nitpicking. This has consistently been an issue. They're a very good team with him off the floor. They have always been this way since he was a rookie. We had that 7-game win streak when he got injured as a rookie. It's just at a certain point, it's not nitpicking. And I really want Jalen to be more and to grow and to get better, but he's not that good defensively. He's still barely grown. He's gotten better at rotations, I guess, but you're one of the most quick twitch athletes in the league, and you can't help as a low man. You can't help in shooting passing lanes. He's good on ball, but they don't actually use him as a stopper because he's not better than Amen or Tari or even Dylan like most nights, which is almost embarrassing. I get those are all defense level guys, but you're the second best athlete on the team. You were drafted number 2 for this to be your team. And at a certain point, man, it is what it is, and he is who he is. And that's probably a sixth man for any successful NBA team. I'm surprised that we've been this good with him playing so many minutes.
And before you get mad at me and Cooper, like, we're fans. I mean, I'm wearing a Rockets cap. He's wearing a Rockets shirt. We want this guy to do well. We put out Rockets content. It's not good when they suck. So
I have a Jalen jersey in my closet right now. I want him to be good more than anything. It's criticism because not just to hate on him. It's because he can play so much better, because when he's in a rhythm, he plays better defense. He makes better passes. He gets to the rim more consistently. It's just a consistency issue. I understand that. I understand it's like a mental thing, and that's just how some people are. But man, if you're going to be this guy who's worthy of getting paid $30 million a year, and you're not just going to be salary filler in a trade, then you got to play better. And that's just the level he has to play at for the usage he's getting, for the minutes he's getting, the role just all this stuff. So it's all from a place of love and wanting him to play well.
And this is key. I was not a huge fan of giving him that extension before the season. The Rockets should have treated him the way the Warriors treated Kuminga. So, Coop, do you think the Rockets trade partners will ask for better pick compensation in an offseason trade if you include Jalen? Will that 3-year, $105 million extension, especially with that player option in the third year, be looked at as an albatross, or will they convince themselves they can fix it?
He's a second overall pick, which makes it an easier, thing to kind of come to terms with, kind of make yourself come to terms with. But if you're a team, would you rather take second overall pick who's being slightly overpaid for the amount of scoring he can give you and his raw scoring numbers? I mean, obviously his advanced analytics, he's being way overpaid. But like for basic scoring numbers, Jalen's being slightly overpaid. Or would you rather get Jayshawn Tate, Steven Adams, Cam Whitmore, like all these guys who are basically filler? I think every time you would rather take the swing on Jalen. As much as we are frustrated with him, there's teams out there that have got to be enamored with him. Too many teams value this kind of strong two-guard scoring, super athlete. And I think at the end of the day, we only really gave him the extension so that you can trade him for a Devin Booker or a Kevin Durant or whoever does become available this offseason, because you do need $30 million to match a $50 million contract. There's not anybody that you want to trade for that you could, other than Fox at this offseason or during the season, who, sad we lost on him, but who's making $30 million a year. You want these guys who are making 50, even 60 now with Jimmy Butler and Steph. You want that level of player, not some $30 million guy.
All right. My third one, and this is not my biggest concern, but Cam Whitmore. He's shown no progress offensively. His field goal percentage dropped from 45% last year to 41%. It's not good. It's worse than Jalen. It's worse than Jabari. Both guys aren't good to begin with, and he's worse than both of them. The process, I'm not telling Cooper anything he doesn't know. It's awful. It's still awful. It's like he won't shoot without dribbling first. And Shane Battier said, I wanted the guys to defend when I defended them to dribble into jumpers because the analytics were better. Cam's still out of control going to the basket. And I think of Mike D'Antoni when I see his shot selection. D'Antoni wouldn't put up with any of this. I can't believe Udoka is putting up with this. Like, hey, when you start taking those shots, you're out of the game. That's my theory on it. It's like, you want to play, you take the right shots. If not, we'll put you on the bench. I'll lose without you. And it's frustrating, Coop, because this is a top 2% NBA athlete. He's Anthony Edwards level, but no skill, no process.
Yeah, I tweeted while watching the Mavs game that he's just not, you can't win basketball games with him on the floor. Obviously, if he's going to have those 7 for 8 nights or whatever, but more and more he's going like 1 for 8, 2 for 11, because he takes the worst shots you've ever seen in your life consistently. And I guess, you want to throw him out there and see if he's hot and see if he can get something to fall, especially because the half court offense is so useless. At least he can get you a shot, but he doesn't cut. He doesn't move off the ball. He's the worst defender on the team by like a huge mile. Like I don't think anybody else comes close to how bad he is defensively. He's awful on the ball.
Reed
No,
Shepherd.
no. Reed can get in passing lanes. Reed has a skill defensively. Cam has nothing, which is it's awful. You said it. He's 6'6", mega athlete, and you're getting outplayed by a guy who's 6'2" and can barely move some games. It really is just an effort thing. It's a focus thing. It's so frustrating to me to watch. And I was a big proponent last season of just letting him play because we don't really have anything better because he was scoring at an okay rate. You want to see him develop and get minutes, but the minutes don't matter because he's not seeing any growth. He is not improved at all. In fact, he just seems like he shows up. When he does play, he's low energy. And then when he doesn't play, he complains and gets upset. It's really hard to see his future here long term. I honestly think he gets traded this offseason just because he pretty obviously doesn't fit with what this team wants to do on either end. But I'd love to see him turn it around post All-Star break and really start to play at least some semblance of winning basketball.
Yeah, I'll just say, this offseason, Cam and Jalen, the way they contribute to winning, they're my first two guys in any trade that I send out, say, hey, these guys are all world talented. Look at them physically and, try to sneak that past some other GMs because we know there's some dumb GMs in this NBA because we just saw it at the trade deadline. It was so pathetic. How about this, Coop? Adam Spillane was on with me last week. He said he believes Udoka will bench Dillon Brooks and start Jabari. The fan base will throw confetti if that happens. What about you? What do you think they do with Jabari here in the next few days?
I think he starts, and for minutes restriction stuff, he comes off the bench, and they see how it works with him as a bench guy. I did think there was a world, especially last season, where he got moved to the bench and was just given more of a fulcrum of the offense type role, where he's really given his shots in the mid-range. He's allowed to get to more of his pull-up game, 1-2 dribble stuff. Just actually seeing what you have in him as an offensive scorer creator type guy. I would like to see them play around with that. I think he starts off the bench for 2-3 games, and then ideally they bench Jalen, but I don't know. I don't think they're going to start Amen. I think they're just going to stick with this was our good starting lineup, their really strong defensive starting lineup, and then get back to Tari and Amen off the bench because that was what was so successful to start the season.
I hope you're wrong because I feel
I do too.
They need to look to this is at some point you got to start looking towards the future. And I talked about it with Adam as well, that look, Dillon Brooks, he just can't handle 30 minutes a night anymore. I think if you backed him off, we would see the defense come back a little bit. I mean, the age, he can't do it over an 82 game schedule. Mm-hmm. And if you came in there with him and, he could go full energy off the bench because he knew he was only getting 25 minutes a night or 28 minutes a night, I think it would be a huge advantage overall. Last thing I do want to, I don't want to talk a lot about the All-Star game. I just want to talk about this has been my issue with the All-Star game. And, I am 53 years old, or 53 now. I lose track. I'm so old, but yeah, I've been around for a long time. So I watched 70s and 80s All-Star games. I watched, not 70s, but definitely 80s and 90s All-Star games growing up and stuff like that. So what I would see is you would have Isaiah Thomas, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson. Those guys policed it. And there was no way guys weren't going to show up playing hard. That was just what you did. And what happened is more money starts to come in. You feel like, oh, I don't need to do this because I've got all this money and I could lose all this money. I think that's part of the reason, which is kind of weird because it's like you're already set for life typically if you're in the All-Star game. So why are you worried about that? So I think that's part of it. I feel like that generation looked at it as hey, we're trying to build something with this sport. This generation doesn't care about the legacy. LeBron just doesn't care about the legacy. He shows up, doesn't play, doesn't, give some other guy the spot. Also, LeBron's never played in the dunk contest, even though he's one of the best athletes that's ever lived. So it's that's part of the issue. The other part, and this is where I'm going to rely a little bit on you, Cooper. So I feel like guys, when they stepped on the court in the 80s and 90s, they were always stepping on the court to win. And then AAU ball started happening and the G League Ignite. And guys could just go out there and just, winning didn't matter. It was like showing off yourself. Defense didn't always necessarily matter, all that sort of stuff. And so now guys get in the habit of, if the game isn't a regular season or a playoff game, I don't have to go out and play hard all the time. And it sort of became an issue. Now, maybe I'm oversimplifying it. Maybe it's trainers or athlete managing guys that are saying, look, you could get hurt, or, I don't want you to get hurt in an all-star game when it's not necessary. But at the same time, I'm just like, this is about legacy. This is about, if you think a sport is just going to be great forever, I give you boxing. Like, they screwed up and boxing is no longer relevant. And if you don't respect the legacy of your sport and this is your showcase, then this is kind of what happens. This is where you go to, where Adam Silver, who I don't fault him for what he's doing. He's trying everything he can to make the All-Star weekend relevant. And it's not working. Maybe bad ideas, but I understand where he's coming from.
Yeah, I think a big problem the All-Star weekend is kind of the death of the try-hard All-Star, like Russell Westbrook and Kyle Lowry, kind of, that arc of guy who's going to show up and play their ass off every single game and be a pest and still get, appreciated as an all-star level player.
But it wasn't any better in the early 2000s, I don't think, was it? Even with
there
those,
were some good ones, like in the mids when both of them were playing. The last good all-star game was the first Elam ending with Kyle Lowry playing crunch time minutes and, Russell Westbrook playing really hard, the years before that. And I don't think they were good. I am not particularly a fan of all-star games just because of this kind of malaise that they fall into in every sport. And everybody's all about, let's save the all-star game. But I mean, at a certain point, it's like, is this even worth saving with how much literally nobody cares? Because to me, it feels like the only way that you save it is by, like, you have to have people come in who actually care. And I don't think you're going to create the outside incentives to get people to care. Because I don't think the reasons are wrong. Like, I don't think not wanting to risk injury in an all-star game is a wrong reason. But the games were fun because there was pride involved. There was like, I want that, there was guys like MJ and Larry Bird who are absurdly competitive and want to win everything.
But what is at stake in Summer League? What is at stake when you see guys during the summer playing hard in a pickup game, but they can't play that hard in an all-star game? Like, that's where I lose that idea.
I really just think it's a cultural thing with the all-star game, is that it's kind of just become a waste of time. And people just, I think you have to get rid of it and like kind of bring it back to make it special again, because it's kind of just become a slog. Like, I don't think most people want to watch it. All anybody ever does is complain. Just get rid of it. Still give them the all-star selections, so that people can still make their money and add to their legacy. But get rid of it for a few years and then re-gauge the interest. Everybody's going to have crazy nostalgia for it in like 4 years if you got rid of it next season.
Unfortunately, there's contracts now with television involved, and I don't think that's going to, there's no way that's going to happen.
I don't think it will, but I think that's the only way to ever get any kind of interest back. Is just like remind people, like, this isn't something that we have to do. Like, we can just make the all-star team like how they do it in college. They do have like all-star festivities after the season ends, but it's not nearly the same level of production. It's more just dudes who want to go out and have fun. Like, all-American teams do not play games against each other. It's just a title that you get. So that would be my only way to fix it. But I just, there's no way it happens. I don't think the networks even make that much money off of it because nobody really wants to watch it. But like, it's got the same issue that normal NBA has, where all anybody ever does is bitch and whine about how awful it is. And so that makes people not try and not care. And it's like, for things to be fun, this is kind of a cultural soapbox I'll stand on as well. For things to be fun, you kind of have to just be unashamed of enjoying things and being unashamed of like trying hard. Like, sometimes you're going to be considered like cringe or, like, oh, this guy's a loser because he's trying hard in the all-star game. But you know what that does? It actually makes the game fun for everyone. Like, this is just a normal thing. It is not cool to not care. It is so much cooler to actually care about things and be invested in them. And I think the All-Star Game is just another battleground for the new wave of nonchalance. But that's the end of my soapbox. So
yeah, well, Wemby agreed with you, because afterwards he said, I don't think it's asking much for us to try hard. And he tried hard, and he was not happy at the late in the game when they allowed the layup at the end. So, that's one of those things where, and I'll just also say with the slam dunk, I saw Ja and Giannis tweet out, Ja's like, oh, I might play now in the slam dunk. And Giannis is like, well, if you play, then I play. And it's like, are we in 5th grade? Like, can you just come out and say that you're going to play instead of like, well, I might play. And then another guy goes, well, if you do, I will. That's like, I feel like we're at the 6th grade dance. We're like, if you go ask that girl to dance, and I'll go ask the other girl to dance. It's like, well, can you not make up your own mind, Giannis, that like, hey, maybe if I do it, some other people might follow me into this. And I also remember that Cam Whitmore said last year, well, I want to earn, this getting into the slam dunk contest. Well, Cam, you're no further along in earning it. So that's something he needs to work on. I want to ask the listeners, what do you guys think either about the Rockets, the All-Star Game, whatever we've talked about? Get in the YouTube comments. And if you're a new fan of the show, support us by subscribing on YouTube. Just really easy. Subscribe. I don't even care if you're getting updates. I'd love for you to get updates when we come out with new shows, but just subscribe. That's all I'm asking. It's free. It costs you nothing. You don't have to be annoyed by updates or whatever. And also subscribe on your favorite podcast app as well. And Cooper, I know you've got to be looking forward to seeing the best college prospects playing tourney ball in a couple of weeks, because we're almost there.
I am very excited to watch more Maryland basketball. They have not the best, but my favorite player in college basketball, Derek Queen. Reminds me of a slightly more nimble Sengun. Very, very fun player. He is one of the most dominant rebounders I've seen in a while. He can drive. He can dribble. If you haven't watched Maryland basketball, watch them play just for Derek Queen. He is incredible. There's so many fun players out there this season. Obviously, Flag's a killer. Rutgers ball is fun for the first time ever. So I'm very excited. We'll have a lot more content coming out here soon. We've been kind of lacking, but we're about to get into draft season, baby, which means it's train's about to take off. So very excited.
He is at Ali_oop_coop on X. Subscribe to Upside Swings. It's great stuff. Thanks so much for giving us a few minutes, Coop.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me on. It's a great time as always.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.